My 13-year-old niece giggled. Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice, while opening the $850 phone I bought her. All 30 guests laughed, except me. I nodded, and with 2 taps, I shut down every payment, credit, bills, subscriptions. Gone. That night, I moved out, cut contact, and vanished, leaving behind only a black backpack. Inside, they found. Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. My 13-year-old niece giggled, peeling away the plastic from the $850 phone I bought her. Her fingers delicate, but her words sharper than glass. Around us, the living room pulsed with the chatter of my family, a gathering of 30 voices, each one too loud, too careless. A birthday cake waited on the kitchen table, its candles not yet lit, but the flames were already burning in my chest. My sister, Lindsay, didn't even look up. Sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, she smirked, a tiny, satisfied smile, like a judge who just heard the verdict she was hoping for. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring something, pretending not to hear, but I saw the way her shoulders lifted slightly, a silent approval. Dad? He didn't even bother to hide it. He chuckled, raised his beer, and muttered, "Well, she's not wrong." Laughter rippled through the room. My cousins grinned, and even Uncle Gary, who barely knew me beyond the occasional family dinner, snorted into his drink. I stood there, just stood there, like a fool. Like the fool I'd always been. The one who paid. The one who fixed. The one who was never enough. "Thanks for the phone, Uncle," my niece chirped, already leaning into her mother's side, her attention on the glowing screen. I watched her, my heartbeat too loud, my face too hot, and suddenly the room felt smaller, suffocating. But I didn't say a word. I just nodded, because that's what I did. I nodded, smiled, pretended. Always pretending. Lindsay looked up, finally, her eyes meeting mine. And in that moment, I saw something, a flicker of amusement, of satisfaction. Like she'd been waiting for this. For me to just stand there, speechless, humiliated. "All right, everyone, let's cut the cake." Mom's voice rang out, bright and cheerful, sweeping away the tension. But the taste of it clung to my tongue, bitter and thick. I moved to the kitchen, leaning against the counter as they gathered around the table. Candles were lit, wishes were made, and I just watched, my hands curling into fists. My jaw clenched, and somewhere beneath the hurt, something colder began to bloom. I felt my phone in my pocket. Just 2 taps. 2 quick taps. And every bill, every subscription, every credit line I'd set up for them, for Lindsay, for Mom, for Dad, they all vanished. My fingers moved without hesitation, like muscle memory, a decision I didn't even know I was making until it was done. Gone. Just like that. The voices blurred into a distant hum. The room swayed around me, a sea of familiar faces that suddenly felt like strangers. They laughed, they cheered, they celebrated, and I wasn't there. Not really. I was a ghost with a wallet. But not anymore. I slipped out without saying goodbye. No one noticed. Of course, they didn't. The one thing my niece got right tonight. I didn't go home. I went straight to my apartment, packed a few essentials into a small travel bag, and then turned back. The black backpack was old, almost forgotten in the corner of my closet. But tonight, it had a purpose. I filled it, but not with my things. Not with anything they would expect. And then I returned. The house was still a noisy mess. No one noticed me slip in, walk down the hallway, and leave the backpack beside the stairs. And then I was gone. Really gone. By the time they noticed, I would be just a shadow. But inside that backpack. Let them find it. Let them try to understand. The silence didn't last long. I expected panic, anger, but what I got was an explosion. It started the next morning. I woke up to the sound of pounding on my apartment door. No phone calls, no polite knocks, just fists hammering against the wood. "Open up. You think you can just do this?" Dad's voice. Loud. Furious. I stayed quiet, watching the door shake as if it might come off its hinges. "I know you're in there. You think you're smart? You think you're better than us?" His voice cracked, not just with rage, but with something else, fear. I stayed silent. I wasn't playing this game. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I heard his heavy footsteps retreat, a muffled curse, and the slam of his car door. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Just one line. "How could you do this to your own family?" I didn't reply. An hour later, Lindsay tried. This time it was a call. I watched her name flash on the screen and let it ring. Then another. And another. 6 calls in a row. Finally, a message. You think you're so clever? You think we can't live without you? Fine. See how long you last without a family. I read it and smiled. Was that supposed to be a threat? Or a promise? But the real storm came that evening. I was just stepping out of the shower when I heard the sound of a key in the lock. I froze. No one should have a key to my place. No one except. The door burst open. Dad stormed in, red-faced, sweat beading on his forehead, Mom right behind him, her eyes wide and frantic. You think you can just lock me out? Dad bellowed. Get out, I said, my voice calm but cold. Get out? Get out? This is what you've become. Mom's voice was shrill, almost hysterical. Abandoning your own family? We raised you. You used me, I corrected, leaning against the kitchen counter, still drying my hair. There's a difference. Dad stepped closer, his fist clenched. You ungrateful little troublemaker. Try it. The words were out before I even thought. Calm. Solid. A challenge. His hand trembled, but it didn't move. We both knew the truth. He wasn't a fighter, never was. He was a bully who hid behind words, who shouted to hide his own fear. What did you do? Mom's voice broke. The cards don't work. Lindsay can't pay her bills. The mortgage, it's all gone. That's right, I nodded. Everything I paid for. Everything I managed. It's over. Dad laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Oh, you think you're so powerful? You think we need you? Seems like you do. I shrugged. Since you broke into my apartment just to beg. Beg. He snarled. You think we're begging? You think. Enough. I snapped, the words slicing through his tirade. Enough. I'm done. Mom stepped forward, her hands outstretched. Please. This is your family. We're all we have. All you have, I corrected. I'm done being your safety net. Your bank. Your doormat. Dad's face twisted. You little pest. I raised a finger. Get out. Now. You can't do this, Mom whispered, tears welling up. This is cruel. Cruel. I laughed. Cruel is telling your son he's worthless while spending his money. Cruel is using me like a tool and laughing behind my back. Dad stepped forward again, but I didn't flinch. This time, he stopped. His shoulders slumped. You'll regret this, he muttered. You'll come crawling back. I won't, I said, my voice like steel. They left, slamming the door behind them. But as I listened to their footsteps fade, I knew this wasn't the end. The next day, they tried another tactic. Lindsay showed up at my office. I saw her through the glass, her face pale, eyes puffy from crying. My boss looked confused, then uncomfortable as she began waving at me. I stayed at my desk. Sir, there's a woman here. She's nobody. I didn't even look up. But she didn't leave. I watched her talking to the receptionist, her voice rising, her hands shaking. Then security stepped in, guiding her out. I knew she'd be back. That night, another knock. My landlord. There's a bit of a situation. He shifted awkwardly. Your family is downstairs, making a scene. Tell them to leave, or I'll call the police. He blinked. But, it's your family. No, I corrected. Not anymore. I watched through the window as they stood there, shouting, waving their arms, until finally, security escorted them away. But I knew them. I knew their persistence. And I knew that somewhere, in that house I left behind, there was a black backpack waiting for them to open, to understand just how far I was willing to go. The silence didn't last long. I knew them too well. Silence was just the calm before the storm. For days, I ignored their calls, their texts, their desperate voicemails. I even skipped work, letting the world fall away while I enjoyed the quiet. But I wasn't naive. I knew they wouldn't give up. It started with Lindsay's tantrums. Messages full of venom, blaming me for everything. Mom's tearful voicemails followed, her voice breaking as she begged me to be the bigger person and save the family. And then came Dad. At first, it was rage, threats, insults, the usual noise. But then his tone changed. Calm. Calculated. An invitation. Son, let's settle this like men. No drama. Just you and me. There's a game this weekend. Our team's playing. Come. Let's talk it out. A setup. I felt it in my bones. But I agreed. I wanted this. So I went. But when I saw the empty seats around him and the black backpack clutched in his hands, I knew I was right. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. But I wasn't the same fool who'd stood in that living room, nodding and smiling. Not anymore. The stadium roared like a living beast. Cheers, screams, the pounding of feet on metal bleachers. It was chaos, a perfect place for secrets to drown. Dad was waiting in Section 12, Row F, the seats around him empty, despite the game being packed. He spotted me instantly, waving with one hand, the other gripping the black backpack. My backpack. I walked down the steps, each stride steady, my eyes locked on him. He looked excited. A twisted smile curled on his lips, like he thought he'd won something. Surprised I called you? He shouted over the noise, patting the seat next to him. Finally decided to talk like men, huh? Talk. I settled into the seat, my gaze never leaving the backpack in his lap. Is that what this is? Oh, I think it's a bit more than that. He leaned in, his voice dropping, barely louder than a whisper. You thought you were so smart, huh? Running away, cutting us off. But you left a little present behind. His fingers drummed against the backpack. We found this. And guess what, genius? We know. Know what? I asked, keeping my voice as calm as the cold wind that swept across the field. Your secrets. Your lies. You think you're clean? That you're better than us? His voice sharpened. You've been hiding things. I should have known. All those times you acted like a saint, like some savior. I almost laughed. Open it, then. Let's see what you think you know. His eyes flashed with something between fear and anger. Don't play games. I don't have to open it. I already know you've been stealing from us. Manipulating. Pretending to be a good son while hiding your little stash. Stash. I leaned back, feeling the cold metal of the seat behind me. The only stash in there is the truth. The crowd around us erupted as the home team scored. But here, in our little pocket of conflict, there was only silence, tension, and his shaking hands on the backpack. You're bluffing, he muttered. You're trying to make me doubt. But it's over. We're telling everyone what kind of person you are. How you abandoned your family. Go ahead. I gestured to the field. Tell them all. Tell them how I paid for Lindsay's rent for 2 years. How I covered your debts when you gambled half your pension away. How I bought that phone for your precious granddaughter just before she told me I was nothing. His face darkened. Shut up. No. Let's make it clear, Dad. You've got a bag full of proof of everything I did for you, and everything you took. And you still think you have leverage? His hand tightened around the backpack, his knuckles white. Don't you talk to me like that. Like what? I leaned forward, my voice still calm, but my eyes burning. Like the worthless piece of furniture you always treated me as? Like the walking wallet? The errand boy. Shut up, he shouted, standing, drawing a few glances from the rows behind us. Sit down. My voice was ice, and for a moment, I saw it, the fear in his eyes. He hated me, but more than that, he feared losing his grip. Or what? He forced a laugh, but it was thin, desperate. What are you going to do? Attack your own father? You think anyone here will take your side? You really think they'd take yours? I gestured to the crowd, the sea of strangers who didn't care about his bluster. You're just an angry old man with a bag full of debts. And they don't know me, but they don't have to. His face twisted, his voice dropped to a snarl. You egoist. Egoist. I smiled. I was your lifeline. And now, you're drowning without me. He swung. I saw it coming, his hand, thick and trembling, aiming for my face. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. He wanted a reaction, a scandal, proof that I was the villain in his story. But I just stared at him, calm, unblinking. And his fist stopped, inches from my face, trembling. I should have left you on the streets, he whispered, his voice shaking. You were always a parasite. Funny. I whispered back, leaning so close I could smell the stale beer on his breath. That's exactly what I thought about you. Something in him broke. His hand fell. His shoulders slumped. The cheers of the crowd became thunderous, the perfect cover for the collapse of whatever pride he had left. I reached out, grabbed the backpack, and yanked it from his grasp. He didn't even resist. Do you want to know what's in here? I asked, loud enough for the people around to hear. Everything I did for you. Every cent. Every sacrifice. People were staring now, some whispering, some pointing. A couple even had their phones out. You want the truth? I unzipped the backpack, pulling out a thick stack of papers. There it is. Proof of how I carried you. How I paid your bills. How I saved your house from foreclosure twice. His face drained of color. And you want to talk about betrayal? I stood, holding the papers high. You betrayed me the day you turned me into your personal ATM. The day you laughed when they told me I was nothing. Stop, he whispered, his voice small, his body sinking into the seat. No. You wanted a scene? You got one. I tossed the papers at his feet, and they scattered, fluttering down the steps like dead leaves. I turned, walking up the steps, past the staring faces, past the whispers. You can't just leave, he shouted, his voice cracking. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. For the first time, his voice meant nothing. They never stopped trying. Not at first. The day after the stadium, the day Dad's pride bled out on the cold metal seats, my phone rang like an alarm. Call after call. Messages flooded in. Accusations. Begging. Threats. A cycle of desperation wrapped in their familiar voices. I ignored it all. Dad was the first to break. His calls went from furious to pleading in a matter of hours. "We can talk this out," he lied. "I'll forget everything. Let's be a family." But I didn't answer. Then it was Mom, her texts dripping with guilt. "You're breaking our hearts. We didn't mean it. Family is all we have." I didn't even read them all. Lindsay tried next. Her messages were pure venom. "You're a coward. A selfish, worthless coward. You've ruined everything." Then, "Please, just talk to me." I didn't mean it. I was scared. "Don't do this." But I did. Silence. That was my answer. That was my revenge. They didn't understand it at first. They thought I was bluffing, playing some cruel game. But as the days bled into weeks, as the bills they once ignored began piling up, as their friends stopped taking sides, they finally understood. They couldn't reach me. The landlord at their house called me, stuttering, trying to explain that they hadn't paid the rent. I told him that wasn't my problem. Mom sent me a photo of the family sitting in the dark, a single candle flickering on the table. "We have nothing left." I deleted it without a second glance. One evening, as I was walking back from the grocery store, I saw him. Dad, standing outside my building, pacing like a madman. His face was pale, his hands shaking, that familiar fire in his eyes replaced with something else. Fear. He saw me, his face lighting up with twisted hope. He rushed forward. "Listen, you can't do this. You're my son." "No, I didn't slow down. I was your wallet." He stepped in front of me, his voice cracking. "We raised you. We gave you everything. You used me." I looked him dead in the eyes. "And now you have nothing." I tried to step around him, but his hand shot out, grabbing my arm. "You don't get to do this." His voice was a snarl, the old anger bubbling to the surface. "You think you're better than us? You think you can just walk away?" "I know I can." I pulled my arm free. And I did. He swung at me. Slow. Weak. I didn't even flinch. His fist glanced off my shoulder, more like a desperate shove than a punch. He stumbled, catching himself against the side of the building, gasping. "Pathetic." The word slipped out like a breath. His face twisted, that familiar rage flaring. "You'll come crawling back. You always do. You're nothing without us." I laughed. Loud. Sharp. It echoed down the quiet street. "I was nothing with you," I said, turning my back. I walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I threw my phone into the bottom drawer of my desk and left it there. The messages, the missed calls, they piled up, but they couldn't touch me. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Shaky script. "Mom, please. Your father is getting sick. Lindsay is losing her mind. We're falling apart. You're the only one who can fix this. Please come home." I crumpled it without reading the rest. They were falling apart? Good. Because for the first time, I wasn't. I didn't move. I didn't change my number. I didn't hide. I stayed exactly where I was, but I stopped being part of their world. And their world crumbled without me. Lindsay's friends stopped answering her calls. Mom's distant relatives, the ones who used to send polite Christmas cards, ignored her now. Dad, he lost his temper at work one too many times and got fired. But I didn't care. I didn't watch. I lived. I cooked for myself, slept peacefully, went for long walks without worrying about incoming messages demanding my time, my money, my life. They were just voices now, ghosts I'd left behind in a burning house. And I was free. Months passed, and silence became a friend. I woke up when I wanted, ate meals without guilt, spent weekends exploring the city I'd once ignored, feeling freedom in every quiet moment. Sometimes I'd catch myself expecting the familiar buzz of desperate texts, the suffocating guilt, the frantic voice demanding I fix their chaos. But it never came. I had done the impossible. I buried them, not in the ground, but in my life. I walked down Main Street one crisp autumn morning, past the cafe where I'd bought overpriced cakes for Lindsay's birthday, the boutique where I'd spent a fortune on gifts, the restaurant where I paid for family dinners, where I was always so generous until I wasn't. Ghosts. Just ghosts. On the corner, a street musician played a slow, aching melody. His voice was rough, fingers dancing over the strings, a voice that didn't try to be perfect, only honest. I stopped, letting the music wrap around me. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about heartbreak. It was about letting go. The world moved around me, busy and alive. I stood still, breathing it in. When the song ended, I tossed a 20 into the open guitar case. The musician nodded, and I smiled. Not because I had to, not because someone expected it, but because I wanted to. And that was the difference. I didn't need them. I never did. I walked on, each step lighter, each breath easier. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, painting the sky in amber and crimson, I felt it, a quiet certainty. I was free.